Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're going to be taking a look at Accra.
Okay.
And specifically the luxury scene in Accra, Ghana.
Right.
So the source that we're looking at for this deep dive is a YouTube video by Ivan Tours.
Mm-hmm.
And the title of the video is Where the Rich Hide in Accra, Ghana with the Ghana flag emoji.
Very interesting.
So this video basically takes you on a tour of one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Accra, and you get to see like
Yes.
million-dollar homes and how much things cost, and just really get like a peek behind the curtain
That's fascinating.
what that kind of wealth and lifestyle looks like there.
I'm excited.
So right from the start of the video, you can feel the creator's passion for showcasing this kind of unseen side of Accra.
Right.
He's really enthusiastic about highlighting the positive aspects of the city, and he even points out like how much construction is happening everywhere as a sign of economic growth and prosperity.
Right. So it's not just about the wealth that's already there.
Right. It's about the growth, the potential.
Exactly.
And that really begs the question, who are the people driving this growth?
Yeah.
And how is their wealth shaping Accra's landscape?
Right. And that's where we get into the neighborhood that the video focuses on, which is called Trasacco.
Okay, Trasacco.
And it's described as like where the rich hide.
Gotcha.
Like it's kind of this hidden enclave of luxury.
And that's so interesting, the fact that it's described as where the rich hide.
Right.
Because that kind of speaks to maybe some economic disparity.
Yeah.
The concentration of wealth in certain areas.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, are they hiding because they don't want to show off? Or is it more about like...
Yeah, or is it just like privacy, security?
Yeah, privacy and security.
Yeah, those kinds of things. And when you see the visuals in the video, it's pretty breathtaking. Like, I picture this multi-level mansions.
Wow.
With unique architecture, lush landscaping, the whole 9 yards.
Okay. Yeah, so it definitely lives up to the hype then.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Of being a luxurious neighborhood.
And here's where things get really interesting in terms of like the financial landscape.
Okay.
In Ghana. So apparently there are no mortgages in Ghana.
So how do people buy these houses?
Cash.
Wow.
Straight cash.
That is mind-blowing.
I know. Can you imagine?
No, like in the U.S., we're so used to the idea of mortgages.
Exactly.
And like 30-year loans and all that.
Right. So it's a completely different system.
Completely different.
And it makes you think about like the pros and cons of a cash-based housing market. Like,
yeah, because on one hand, you avoid the burden of debt and interest payments.
Right.
But on the other hand, it limits access to home ownership for people who might not have that kind of cash on hand.
Exactly.
So it creates a very different dynamic.
It does. And then another interesting detail that's highlighted is the lack of HOAs.
No HOAs.
No HOAs at all.
So what does that mean for like community regulations?
Right. Like how do they...
In maintenance and all of that.
Yeah, decide on, what's acceptable in terms of the look of the neighborhood or, handling disputes.
Right. Because in the U.S., HOAs can be pretty strict.
They can.
About, what color you can paint your house and landscaping and all of that.
Exactly.
It's fascinating to think about how that works.
It is.
In a place without HOAs.
And so as we're going through this tour of Trasacco, the creator is with his friends Blue and Elsa.
Okay.
And their reactions to the sheer price of these homes are priceless.
Oh, I bet.
You can really sense their awe, which emphasizes just how exclusive this ation is.
So it's not just like, oh, these are nice houses. Like, bro, these are ridiculously expensive houses.
Exactly. And it's like they're almost in disbelief at some points.
Gotcha.
And then we get to see a tour inside a $3,000 per month rental.
$3,000 a month?
I know.
That's a lot.
This is a 5-bedroom house. It's got an expansive kitchen, en-suite bathrooms, high ceilings, tons of natural light.
Wow, so it's definitely like luxury living.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So where does that kind of price point fit in within the broader Accra housing market?
Right. So it seems like that's probably on the higher end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But it gives you a sense of like what's possible in terms of luxury rentals there.
Right, and what kind of clientele they're catering to.
Exactly.
People with significant disposable income.
For sure.
Interesting.
And one of the most captivating parts of the video is when the creator runs into someone who knows the owner of what's potentially the most impressive house in the whole neighborhood.
What are the chances of that?
I know, right?
Just bumping into someone?
Right place, right time.
Who knows the owner of like the most impressive house?
And not only that, he gets access to film inside the property.
That is amazing.
Like, can you imagine that happening just anywhere.
Like in the U.S., I feel like people would be a lot more hesitant
Yeah, for sure.
to let a stranger film their house.
It speaks to maybe some cultural differences.
Right, in terms of like privacy and property ownership.
Yeah, maybe a bit more openness or a sense of community.
Yeah, exactly. And trust me, this mansion is on a whole other level.
Okay, so what are we talking about here?
We're talking multiple balconies, a 3-car garage, high-tech security features, like top-tier opulence.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned the security features. What kind of security features are we talking about?
Oh, like cameras and motion sensors and all the bells and whistles.
So it seems like security is a big concern
Yeah,
in a neighborhood like this.
definitely.
That makes sense. And then wait till you hear about the backyard.
Okay, what about the backyard?
It's basically a paradise with an outdoor kitchen, a hot tub, a swimming pool, and even a guest house.
So it's like a whole compound.
Yeah, like it's its own little world back there.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
It is. And so the estimated cost to build a home like this in Trasacco is between $900,000 and $1 million.
$900,000 to $1 million.
Yeah.
To build a house.
And that got me thinking, like, what could you get for that price in like a major U.S. city or European city?
Probably not something like that.
Probably not even close.
Yeah.
So it makes you think about like the relative cost of living and
Right.
the potential investment opportunities in Accra.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a luxury property,
Right.
Accra might be a really interesting place to consider.
It might be. And, the luxury in Accra isn't just confined to residential areas.
Okay.
The video also takes us to Sky Bar,
Sky Bar.
which is this rooftop bar with panoramic views of the city.
Okay, so it's like a social hub.
Yeah, like a
Right.
place to see and be seen.
Interesting.
And while they're at Sky Bar, they have this really interesting conversation with a woman named Elsa, who's a Nigerian expat who's been living in Accra for 9 years.
9 years, wow.
And her perspective is so valuable because she provides these insights into
Yeah.
the social scene and the cultural dynamics of the city.
So it's not just about the physical spaces. It's about the people and their experiences.
Exactly.
So what are some of the things Elsa highlights?
So she talks about the dating scene in Accra,
Okay.
and she compares the Ghanaian culture to the Nigerian culture.
Interesting.
And she also touches upon the challenges faced by African women in general.
Okay, this is fascinating. I want to hear more about Elsa's perspective.
Me too. We're going to get into all of that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, I can't wait, so stay tuned. All right, so we left off talking about Elsa and her insights into Accra.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear more about her observations, especially about the dating scene.
Yeah, she had some interesting things to say about that.
Right, like how Ghanaian men apparently don't take dating as seriously.
Fascinating, isn't it?
It is. Like, is that just her perception, or is that like a wider cultural...
Right, is it a generational thing?
Yeah.
Or is it specific to certain social circles?
Exactly. And she contrasts that with like Nigerian men.
Right, where she's from originally.
Right, who she says are more like intentional
Okay.
about dating.
So it's like a different mindset
Yeah.
when it comes to relationships.
Right, and she even uses the word aggressive to describe Nigerian men,
Wow. Okay.
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, like are they aggressive in a bad way or is it more like
I think she meant more in like a go-getter kind of way.
assertive?
Yeah, assertive, like they know what they want
Gotcha.
and they go for it.
Interesting.
But it definitely highlights the cultural differences even within like the same continent.
Because even though Ghana and Nigeria are neighboring countries,
Right.
they have distinct cultures and traditions.
Exactly.
So it's not surprising that those differences would extend to
Yes.
dating norms as well.
And, Elsa also talks about this pressure that African women face
Yeah.
to marry and have children by a certain age.
That's a common theme we see in many cultures,
It is.
not just in Africa.
But it's interesting to hear her perspective on it.
Right, because it's coming from someone
Yeah.
who's living in Accra
Right.
and experiencing that firsthand.
And she even talks about how she's like kind of rebelling against that pressure.
really?
She's like she's choosing to focus on her career and her personal goals.
So she's challenging those societal expectations.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not going to let society dictate
Yeah.
my timeline.
I admire that.
Me too. It's very empowering.
It is, especially for younger women who might be feeling
Right.
that same pressure.
And one thing that really stood out to me about Elsa was her honesty about her journey of self-acceptance,
Oh, yeah.
especially when it comes to her skin tone.
Right, because she talks about how she used to use skin lightening creams
She did.
and how she's come to embrace her natural skin tone.
Yeah, it's such a powerful story.
It is.
Yeah.
It's about unlearning those beauty standards
Right.
that have been imposed on her.
And it's not just about like physical appearance, it's about like inner confidence and self-love.
Exactly. It's about recognizing your worth and beauty, regardless of what society tells you.
And I think it's especially important for young girls
Yeah.
to hear these kinds of stories.
Because representation matters.
It does.
Seeing someone who looks like you, embracing their natural beauty, can be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And it can help to challenge those narrow beauty standards.
That's just so prevalent.
And not just in Africa, but globally.
Yeah, for sure.
So Elsa's story is a really important one.
It is. And speaking of important stories, I'm also really interested in hearing more about her observations about the cultural differences between Nigeria and Ghana.
Right, because she's lived in both countries.
Right.
So she has this unique perspective.
And it's not just about like big, obvious differences.
Right.
It's about these subtle nuances.
Like what kind of nuances?
Well, for example, she talks about how greetings are so important.
Oh, okay.
In Nigerian culture.
Yeah.
Like even strangers are acknowledged and addressed with respect. So it's like a sign of respect.
Yeah, and she contrasts that with what she sees as a more casual approach in Ghana.
So it's like a different level of formality in social interactions.
And it makes you think about like how these small differences can reveal so much about a culture.
It's like a window into their values and their social norms.
Exactly, and it highlights the importance of cultural awareness and sensitivity.
Because if you're not aware of these nuances, you can easily misinterpret someone's behavior.
Yeah, like you might think someone's being rude when they're actually just adhering to their cultural norms.
So it's about being mindful and respectful of those differences.
Absolutely. And, you know, Elsa also talks about how Nigerians are more assertive than Ghanaians.
In what way?
Well, she uses the example of the entertainment industry. And she says that Nigerians are more like go-getters.
Like they're more ambitious.
Yeah, and they're not afraid to like hustle and make things happen.
While Ghanaians are more laid back.
Yeah, she describes them as being more relaxed.
Interesting.
But, you know, it's important to remember that these are just her observations.
Right.
And it's not meant to be like a sweeping generalization.
Of course not.
About entire cultures.
Because within any culture, you'll find a diversity of personalities and behaviors.
But it's still interesting to consider how these cultural nuances might shape individual behavior and even like a country's overall character.
Like a cultural fingerprint.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes each place unique.
And, you know, we've talked a lot about Elsa's insights into culture, but I'm also curious to hear more about her modeling career.
Oh, yeah, because she mentions that she started with an agency.
She did.
But then transitioned to freelance work.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think prompted that shift?
Well, it sounds like she wanted more control over her career.
Okay.
And more flexibility.
Like she wanted to choose her own projects.
Exactly. Right. And she also probably wanted to maximize her earning potential.
Right, because freelance work often allows you to set your own rates.
And work with multiple clients.
Exactly.
So it can be more lucrative.
But she also talks about the challenges of modeling in Ghana.
Right, because it's not a very well-established industry.
And it's not always seen as like a real job.
Right. There can be a lot of stigma.
Yeah, and she even says that it's not really a sustainable full-time profession.
So what does she do to supplement her income?
Well, she mentions that she does some content creation.
Okay, like YouTube videos or social media.
Yeah, and she also has other ventures that she's involved in.
So she's hustling.
She is.
She's a true entrepreneur.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because she talks about how there's this growing demand for dark-skinned models.
That's really encouraging to hear.
It is. It suggests a shift towards greater inclusivity.
And a rejection of those Eurocentric beauty standards that have dominated the industry for so long.
And she specifically mentions working with a brand that was importing shea butter from Ghana.
Okay.
And they wanted to feature dark-skinned models.
So they were being intentional about representation.
And I think that's so important for brands to do.
It shows that they're not just paying lip service.
Right.
To diversity.
They're actually putting it into practice.
Exactly, and they're recognizing the beauty of all skin tones.
And it also helps to like break down stereotypes and promote a more authentic representation of Africa.
Because Africa is not a monolith.
It's not.
There's so much diversity within the continent.
And you know, one thing I found really relatable about Elsa was...
What's that?
Her confession that she doesn't know how to cook.
Oh yeah, she's like a foodie, but she can't cook.
I know, I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear someone break that stereotype.
Because there's this assumption that all African women are amazing cooks.
Right, like it's some kind of innate ability.
And she's like, nope, not me.
And she blames it on being the firstborn.
She does?
Like she never had to learn.
Which is interesting because it touches upon like family dynamics and birth order.
And how those things can shape our roles and responsibilities.
And, you know, I think it's great that she's embracing her own unique path.
Yeah.
Even if it deviates from what's expected of her.
It's about owning your individuality.
Exactly.
And defining your own success.
And I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive.
Right.
Where we'll kind of zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture of Accra's growth and the economic and social implications.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned. Okay, so we've seen the luxury, we've heard Elsa's perspective. Yeah. But like, what does all of this tell us about Accra? Like, what's the bigger picture here?
Well, I think what's really interesting is that it shows us just how complex Accra is.
Okay.
It's not just this like one-dimensional city.
Right.
It's got this incredible mix of like...
economic growth, but then also these like persistent inequalities.
Yeah, you see that everywhere.
Right, and you've got this like allure of luxury alongside the realities of everyday life for most people.
Right, like it's not all mansions and rooftop bars.
Exactly, and then you've got this like constant interplay between tradition and modernity.
Right.
It's like the city that's constantly evolving.
And trying to find its balance.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like a city of contrasts.
It really is.
And it makes you think about like the future of Accra.
Right, like how do you manage that growth in a sustainable way?
And how do you make sure that everyone benefits?
Exactly.
Not just the wealthy elite.
And how do you preserve the culture as the city becomes more and more globalized?
Because you don't want to lose that unique identity.
Absolutely.
And, you know, speaking of globalization, the video really highlights the influx of expats and foreign investment.
Yeah. Especially in that luxury housing market.
Which is great for the economy.
But it also raises concerns about affordability for locals.
Right, because if the demand for luxury housing goes up, prices are going to increase across the board.
And then it becomes harder for people who've lived there for generations to afford to stay there.
It's a tough situation.
It is, and it's something that a lot of cities around the world are dealing with.
It's that classic tension between development and displacement.
Exactly.
You want progress, but you don't want to push people out.
Right, and it makes you wonder, like, what's going to happen to Accra in the long term?
And it's not just about economics.
Right.
It's about the social fabric of the city as well.
Exactly, like what's going to happen to the culture.
Right, because culture is always evolving.
Yeah.
But rapid development can sometimes accelerate that change.
And not always in a good way.
Right. It can lead to the erosion of traditions and the homogenization of culture.
So it's like finding that balance between progress and preservation. But, you know, despite all these challenges, there's also this sense of hope and dynamism.
Oh, absolutely.
That comes through in the video.
Like there's this energy in Accra.
Yeah.
This feeling that anything is possible.
And I think Elsa embodies that.
She really does.
With her hustle and her entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, she's not afraid to go after what she wants.
And she's using her platform to like challenge the status quo and inspire others.
And let's not forget the beauty of Accra itself.
Right. It's such a visually stunning city.
The architecture, the colors, the people.
It's like a feast for the senses.
So yeah, I think this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexities of Accra.
It's not just like a tourist destination.
Right.
It's a real city.
With real people.
Facing real challenges.
And real opportunities.
And it's a city that's worth paying attention to.
Absolutely.
So to wrap things up,
yeah,
if you're looking for a place that's vibrant and full of life and culture.
And a little bit of luxury, Accra might be the place for you.
It's definitely a city that will leave a lasting impression.
I think so too.
So that's it for our deep dive into Accra.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed it.
And we'll see you next time
for another deep dive.